Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today I'd like to talk about my friend and colleague, Stephan A. Schwartz. He is the person whom I have done more video conversations with in the new Thinking Aloud series than any other individual. If you look at the listings page and scroll down, you'll see there are 24 individual, at least half hour in length, roughly half hour in length, video conversations with Stefan. Sometimes I call him Stephan, and I've known him for 40 years, but Stefan is the correct pronunciation. He tolerates people like me calling him Stephan from time to time. But the key, I think you should know, is that he's one of the most significant people ever to appear in the field of parapsychology. I have enormous admiration for his work. Of course, we have many differences. That would be normal for a good friend and colleague, but I can't emphasize enough how important his contributions have been to the field of parapsychology. So I want to review them now. And for those of you who may not know how to access the listings page, let me say this: at the very beginning of this and every other InPresence video segment, you'll see a link that says, click here, and it'll take you to hot links to every single InPresence video. Well, of course, if you've done that, you may know that you're getting the entire listings page. It will take you to the alphabetical listing for Mishlove, but if you just scroll down below Mishlove, you'll see every other person, and when you come to Schwartz, there you'll see the 24 individual interviews with Stefan. And let me highlight a few of them for you. The first one I did with him actually was about his encounter with the Edgar Cayce work. Edgar Cayce is widely regarded by some people as America's most important and most brilliant psychic. And for many years I thought of him as being kind of trivial, kind of popular, but not of great interest to parapsychologists, because the parapsychology community of J.B. Rhine at Duke University and so on thought very little of Edgar Cayce. But if you hear Stefan's account, you'll see that it's really quite significant. And not only that, in the very first segment of the InPresence series, I described a psychic dream that I had that changed my whole life. And Stefan's encounter with the Edgar Cayce material was based on a similar set of circumstances. It wasn't a dream in his case, but he was going through an existential crisis when another lady had a dream that brought her to drive through the Virginia countryside and find him at a country estate where he was more or less wallowing in misery. And that encounter changed his life significantly. So I have that in common with Stefan, and I think that's a very important piece of my biography and his as well. Some people have said that I'm something of an expert in the field of applied psi. It's one of my big interests. But Stefan is more than an expert. He's a major contributor to the field of applied psi. I have to say, as I think about it, I'm not sure that anybody has done more than he has in the area, especially of psychic archaeology, but he's done a lot of research in healing. He's really worked very extensively with remote viewing, is one of the founders of the International Remote Viewing Association. Not that he himself is particularly renowned as a remote viewer, but he sure has the ability to work with others who have that kind of talent. And he's a rare person in this sense. He has entrepreneurial ability. I know many of my viewers have commented on the videos and they refer to him as Dr. Schwartz, but the truth of it is he doesn't possess a higher academic degree. He's not a PhD, he doesn't have a doctorate. It doesn't matter in his case because his accomplishments exceed most of us who do have those kinds of credentials. And I say that out of admiration and respect, honestly. Of particular interest, I should think, for those of you, are his Alexandria Project interview and also the video with him about Project Deep Quest. Those are two examples of actual expeditions that he organized and financed and conducted the research, and he goes into great lengths about how careful he was in that research, how he worked to bring in outside experts, how he documented things every step along the way. And one of the interesting things about Stefan is that before he engaged in any of his psychic archaeology work, he wrote the book, The Secret Vaults of Time, an especially well-written book. He reviews the whole history of psychic archaeology, and it goes back some distance. And then he concludes the book by saying, well, if I were to do it today, this is how it ought to be done. And he lays out a methodology for doing psychic archaeology work. Or he might prefer to say non-local consciousness archaeological work, because I don't think he likes the term psychic. I'm not afraid of that term, but some people find it off-putting. In any case, he then went out and executed various expeditions based on the methodology that he had published in The Secret Vaults of Time. Very, very important. And I highly recommend all of those 24 videos, and let me explain, about half of them are not related to parapsychology directly. Many of them are about his spiritual attitudes, but also I have to say this, for those of you who may be interested, I'm very sympathetic to Stefan's work at a political level. Now, a few segments ago, I did an InPresence segment on politics and consciousness, and I said that when we talk about politics, if we're going to talk about it at all, it should be based on facts. Now, Stefan publishes and makes available for free an internet newsletter called the Schwartz Report. You can go to schwartzreport.net and subscribe for free. I have been subscribing for years, and I recommend it for this reason. It's based on data. He looks at factual data. He claims, he shares my, I suppose, liberal bias politically, but he says he doesn't care about politics. He cares about the data. He's interested in statistics concerning what nations, what states have the highest levels of individual well-being. The healthiest states, the states with the best employment, the states that have the best track record with regard to the environment, the states in which there are fewer unnecessary deaths due to gun violence, the states in which children are healthier. Those sorts of statistics are meaningful to him in terms of the communities that are producing those results and how they do it. I think that's a very good basis for developing political views. And frankly, I think it's worth paying attention to no matter where you stand on the political spectrum. That data ought to be useful to you. And the focus on data is an important way to look at social issues. The other thing I can say about his work is that it's a warning for us. Where do we see the worst results? Where do we see the most dangerous signs of environmental instability, drought, for example, and certainly the rise of authoritarianism around the world? These are trends that he follows. And even if you disagree with his politics, I think if you're interested in engaging in meaningful discussion, you want to look at where the facts stand. Now, you might wish to disagree with him about facts. In the previous segment of the InPresence series, I suggested that, every so-called fact is theory-laden or cultural-laden. So, yeah, there's room for disagreement, but as far as I'm concerned, you can't really have much of a discussion at all if you ignore the facts that are available. So I see Stefan's work as very complete. He addresses political questions. He has a lot to say about spiritual growth, meditation, healing. He's done some excellent research in the applied Psi arena. And he also has theoretical ideas about how parapsychology works. He's a model for me of an ideal parapsychologist. I don't think very many people like Stefan come down the tubes. In order for anybody to replicate his work, they have to have his entrepreneurial skills, his skill at actually organizing expeditions. But it's my fervent hope that somebody listening to this video right now might be inspired to do the sort of work that Stefan has done, to replicate the kind of findings that he has produced, because in my view, that's how parapsychology is likely to progress. So I highly recommend that if you haven't watched those videos with Stefan, they're important, and I urge you to take a look at them. Thank you for being with me.